I know that you know that the Bloomberg business, the entire company, everything associated with Bloomberg hates Elon Musk and Tesla. But, I just can't understand why, with all the lawsuits going on right now with regard to defamation, that Elon hasn't just gone after these folks. So this is the headline here on this Bloomberg piece is Elon Musk's empire is creaking under the strain of Elon Musk. The subheadline, Tesla, SpaceX, and xAI are struggling to deal with the fallout from Musk's Trump feud and wild bets. And this is by Max Chafkin and Edward Ludlow. So the black eye was easier to miss than it should have been. Perhaps it was the shadow cast by his Doge caps, or because he was rolling his neck as if he's just received the world's most relaxing massage, or because everyone was paying attention to Donald Trump. Maybe it was all of those things. In any case, it took 40 minutes before anyone asked the obvious question: what happened to Elon Musk's face? Musk blamed a parenting mishap. I said, go ahead, to his child. He said, punch me in the face. And he did, he said, referring to his 5-year-old son, X. I didn't really feel much at the time, and I guess it just bruised up. So the explanation, which came on May 30th during what was supposed to be Musk's Oval Office send-off, was reassuring for anyone concerned about Musk's well-being. Earlier that day, the New York Times had published a report denied by Musk in which anonymous sources suggested that his use of psychedelic drugs was contributing to a pattern of erratic behavior. On the other hand, Musk's roughhousing suggested a metaphor for his brief and chaotic tenure in presidential politics. The richest man in the world was leaving the White House with a self-inflicted physical injury and perhaps a few psychic ones. So you see, they throw out the psychedelic drug piece. They throw out that, and they don't bother to talk anything about the other side of it, or whether it was true, or what was said beyond that, or whether there was any proof. Oh, they just throw it out there and they just leave it to just kind of sit there up in the air. Well, it was about to get much worse. Soon enough, he'd find himself and his business interests firmly in Trump's crosshairs and losing altitude. Musk had started his stint in the second Trump administration as close to the top of the world as any centibillionaire can be. He appointed himself head of the so-called Department of Government Efficiency. That's kind of a stretch. The cost-cutting effort that made him briefly one of the most powerful people in Washington and provided the backdrop for a surreal kind of political performance art. He stalked around the Oval Office as if it was his personal domain. He taunted civil servants. He did? He cut funding to food banks. He boasted about sending entire federal agencies into the wood chipper. He demanded access to sensitive military plans. No, he didn't. And troves of personal data. No, he specifically said he didn't want the personal data. What he wanted was the metadata and the dollar amounts. And he received much of it. I would love for them to give one iota of proof on that. World leaders, eager to please Trump, granted licenses to Musk's rocket company, SpaceX, an advertiser who backed away from Musk's social network after his various anti-Semitic outbursts, began buying ads on X again. These were, people have continued to buy ads on X, and they've continued to line up Starlink purchases like crazy after he's lost his position at the White House, if you will, or lost his advantage at the White House. This was unrelated. It was probably related to making friends with him and having a relationship with him. And then this whole business about his anti-Semitic, how do they call it? His backed away from Musk's social network after his various anti-Semitic outbursts. Again, nothing here, nothing at all. In terms of proof of anti-Semitic anything, and or any of the other things that have happened since then to prove that the last thing in the world he is an anti-Semite. But nothing about the fact that there was a cabal, a group of advertisers working to try to put X out of business because they didn't like the fact that it was going to be a neutral resource as opposed to a liberal part of the Democratic Party. Behind Musk rising net worth was a sense among many investors, well, rising some days and not so much the other days, that he and the president he'd spent $300 million to help elect had essentially merged their interests. I love real Donald Trump as much as a straight man can love another man, Musk boasted. In March, he attended a cabinet meeting wearing a hat that proclaimed Trump was right about everything. He continued to take credit for Doge cuts, even as public soured on them. Well, I don't know. Some of the liberals have soured on them because they didn't like the cuts that were going to be cutting into their own personal fiefdoms, but also they didn't like the idea that illegal immigrants were going to no longer get freebies. The enthusiasm pleased Trump, at least for a time, but Musk's grandstanding also costs him dearly. Musk entered politics in 2024 as a widely admired businessman. Well, by the left. A year later, polls showed him with a net favorability rating of about -20, making him much less popular than Trump or most other national political figures. It's because, it's nothing like leaving the cult. If you leave, I'm sorry, the Democrats are not quite a cult, but if you've been considered to be a Democrat and you leave, it's not going to go well with you. Some Tesla owners have been slapping anti-Musk bumper stickers on their electric cars. Other prospective ones have shopped elsewhere. In the most recent quarter, Tesla reported that it delivered 13% fewer vehicles than it did a year ago, despite growth in the overall market for EVs. Tesla stock is down more than 30% after reaching the high after the election. Once again, the election high created the high, along with the robotaxi expectation. But the fact that it's come down is indicative of the fact that there was no longer the immediacy of the robotaxi and the fact that there was a falling out of favor. None of this would seem especially damaging if Musk had managed to maintain his close ties to Trump, who had been urging his followers to buy Teslas and whose administration was well positioned to loosen regulations that affect Tesla and to funnel contracts to SpaceX. Well, once again, half of that I will go along with. We were hoping there would be loosening regulations, but we wanted them to be fair, and Tesla said as much. But he doesn't have to funnel contracts to SpaceX. SpaceX provides all of the space services in the United States. There's nobody else out there. There's nobody to do anything else. And they're sometimes 10 times cheaper. But days after appearing at the Oval Office with a black eye, Musk spun into social media tantrum of epic proportions even for him. Among other things, he said Trump would never have been elected without him. That's probably true. Then he claimed without evidence that Trump was accomplice to the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein. That's not what he said, and alleged that Trump had covered them up. Because of this, Musk said Trump should be impeached and replaced with Vice President J.D. Vance. Trump responded by threatening to cancel all of SpaceX's contracts. That's not going to happen. The feud cooled. Musk deleted the Epstein claims and pseudo-apologized. I regret some of my posts, he said. Then he resumed his criticisms of Trump's one big beautiful bill, which was, of course, pretty much how it all got started, that and the decision not to allow his friend to become head of NASA, which in addition to extending the 2017 tax cuts, also cuts subsidies to Tesla. Did you know what do you know what Doge is? Trump asked in a press event on July 1. Doge is the monster that might have to go back and eat Elon. By the way, as you well know, Musk has said he didn't want any subsidies as long as big oil didn't have any subsidies. Trump's threat is less fanciful than it might sound. Musk is rich on paper with a net worth of about $360 billion, now over $400 billion, according to Bloomberg Billionaires Index. But he's also cash poor, dependent in large part on the stock price of Tesla, on continued good relations with the U.S. government, and on his continued ability to raise almost limitless sums of money from investors who basically go along with whatever he says. Oh, but I thought his empire is crumbling. Somehow these people still throw money at him, anything he says that he wants to do. Each leg of that stool seems wobblier than ever, although he's raised so much money since then just for X, not to mention SpaceX. Tesla's stock price has fallen precipitously. Trump and Musk are sniping at each other in public, and even some of the staunchest pro-Musk investors are issuing vague warnings about the need for Tesla's board to get involved. No, these would be the couple of yo-yos in the Tesla community. I won't mention any names right now. This is not anybody significant. Musk companies are financially intertwined, making serious damage difficult to contain. And there are many more weapons Trump could deploy against Musk's business interests were he so motivated. What if some of those irrational new rule or executive order, as a longtime Republican insider who spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. It's an entirely unpredictable regulatory environment. This person says there's also the risk of invisible hand retribution for Musk via one of the open investigations he already faces from federal agencies, including the Securities and Exchange Commission, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think Trump's going to do that. I really don't. I don't think he would have ever done it. I certainly don't think he's going to do it now. In late May, and they don't ever give the other side of it, like what the negative implications would be for SpaceX, if for the whole United States, for the entire public, not to mention the implications for the 140-some thousand employees of Tesla. In late May, Musk said he was back to spending 24/7 at work. He's done this before, usually focusing on a single goal. This time he named several. Tesla, SpaceX, xAI each face urgent challenges. And then there's revenge. On July 4th, Musk unveiled a third political party that he's calling the America Party, an effort, he said, to elect independent lawmakers, almost certainly at the expense of Republican majority in Congress. In the first trading day that followed, Tesla's market value fell by $70 billion. That was true. Musk, who didn't respond, of course, to requests for comment, has an uncanny ability to invent his way out of trouble. Tesla has almost gone bankrupt at least twice. Elon even says that, and I don't believe it. SpaceX almost ran out of cash before its first rocket reached orbit, but Musk's current bets, a robotaxi, a novel rocket that is yet to fly safely, and artificial intelligence startup that's losing more than $1 billion a month, are as far-fetched as anything he's tried to this point. And each one, as you'll see in the 3 case studies that follow, is arguably part of what has put his empire in such shaky ground. The U.S. president has the temperament and tools to hurt Musk's empire, but on the list of risk factors, the Elon Inc., Trump has to get in line behind Musk himself. Well, that won't age well, as we'll certainly see in the not too distant future. So on June 22nd, a dozen or so Tesla influencers arrived in Austin for what Musk had billed as the dawn of a new era in travel. Tesla finally had a self-driving taxi to show off. This is a historic day, proclaimed Herbert Ong, an investor and YouTuber. Hey, Herbert, got a call out in your favorite magazine at the start of a 4-hour live stream documenting some of the first rides. Woohoo, here we go. What followed was a series of delays and errors, including the car driving itself to a different place, forcing Ong to speed walk several city blocks to catch up with it. Finally, he was into a modified Tesla Model Y and rode in the back seat for a 12-minute trip that would have seemed boring to anyone who's been in a Waymo in the past few years. Then some more waits and a half dozen more rides. I think that's like, you could have put any kind of spin. You could have put a neutral spin. You could have put a positive spin. No, they chose a negative spin. In a way, the introduction of Tesla's robotaxi was indeed epic. They pay off from a very long string of wild promises. In 2015, Musk told investors his cars would be able to drive themselves within 3 years. When that deadline came and when he said that actually the self-driving cars were coming in 2019. In 2019, he declared the service almost complete and promised 1 million Tesla robotaxis by 2020. It went on like this for 6 more years. Nevertheless, investors kept bidding up Tesla's share price. Some were meme stalkers and Musk fanboys, but many professional investors, most notably Cathie Wood, founder of ARK Investment Management LLC, bought into his vision of a robotic future. For context, Tesla has a market value roughly 20 times greater than that of General Motors Company, which sells 3 times as many cars. There are 2 possible explanations for the discrepancy. Either Tesla is widely overvalued compared to other automakers, or it's poised for massive growth. At the moment, though, Tesla is shrinking. It's reported its first annual sales decline in January and then reported declines in car deliveries in the next 2 quarters. If Cybertruck has flopped, since the 2023 release, with roughly 5,000 of the pickups selling in the latest quarter, according to the trade publication Electrek, which is a cousin of Bloomberg in terms of wrong information. Musk has predicted annual sales of 250,000 to 500,000, and it's looking like 20,000 might be more realistic. So they don't mention any of the positives, of course. Last year, Musk appeared to abandon plans for a low-cost vehicle that many analysts were counting on to attract new customers, opting instead to cut the cost of the company's existing lineup. All the while, his right-wing turn seems to repel many of the crunchy car buyers who were once Tesla's biggest fans. Foot traffic to Tesla stores fell dramatically last fall as Musk's political presence became more visible and inventory of unsold cars began piling up. He doesn't mention any of the things that the Democrats were doing to the stores. In May, Matthew Lebrad, a former sales manager who quit the company in protest, told Bloomberg Business that he believed the company's redesigned Model Y sedan was selling poorly because the new design made the date of purchase obvious. You can't put "and I bought this before he went crazy" sticker on that one. Yeah, so that guy had no bias at all. And of course, Model Ys are selling just fine. Drama within Tesla has created an extra layer of complexity for Musk. Several senior leaders have left in recent months, including his leaders are always leaving. This is like, I'm going to just skip that paragraph. It doesn't help. Musk has tried to wave all this away. The reality is that in the future, most people are not going to buy cars, he said during Tesla's earnings call in April. In other words, think of the robotaxis. In May, he threw himself into the details and timing of the Austin release event, according to two people familiar with the Tesla operations. These people say Musk's plan was to unveil a limited ride-hailing service to a small group of users as a sort of proof of concept, while lobbying for federal rules that would theoretically permit Tesla to use robotaxi rides nationwide. Tesla's been developing a two-seater robotaxi that Musk has said will be ready for the road sometime next year. Developing a two-seater Tesla has shown a two-seater robotaxi, or Cybercab is the right word, the right name, which was kind of revolutionary, but of course they're never going to say any of those kind of things. It may have trouble selling his plan to the new presidential frenemy. On the campaign trail, Trump railed against EVs and told a gathering in a Detroit Economic Club that he would stop autonomous vehicles from operating on American roads. And although Trump was happy to put Musk at the center of DOGE, his newly passed tax bill looks to be disastrous for Tesla's finances. Yeah, it's fine. Nobody cares. The bill removes, yeah, we know all that. We're just going to skip that. Let's go on down to Tesla's stock rose 8% during the first day of trading following the Austin release, but lost all those gains in the next few days because the limits of the technology became clear and there was other things going on also. One Tesla robotaxi crossed a double line, one out of many, many, many rides. We already know all that. For now, Tesla robotaxi's fleet consists of only 10 to 20 cars, limited to a part of to Austin. 𝐒𝐦𝐚𝐲's ride, like all rides in the robotaxi so far, was overseen by a company employee in the passenger seat who was there to stop the car, grab the wheel in an emergency. No, not to grab the wheel, only to stop the car. 𝐒𝐚𝐲 began his ride by asking the safety driver's name. That's not of importance, the monitor replied without looking back. Tesla has also said that its early robotaxi rides are being monitored remotely by teleoperators who can overtake in the event of a problem. In other words, each of Tesla's supposedly driverless cars has at least two drivers at the ready. The other way of saying this would have been, Elon Musk has stated over and over again that they're going to start with an abundance of caution, and that certainly makes sense, doesn't it? And that they're going to slowly but surely work until they get rid of the extra rider and that they get rid of most of the oversight. In the history of self-driving, I've never seen a car company need this much external support. Boy, she's pretty stupid because all of them used this much external support when they started out. This is Missy Cummings, director of George Mason University's Autonomy and Robotics Center and former advisor to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Waymo LLC does have remote assistance standing by to help its cars, but it's operating 1,500 autonomous taxis without the in-car safety drivers in 5 cities, including Austin. But it wasn't for the first 10 years of its existence. It had safety drivers. Like several other autonomous vehicle experts, Business Week interviewed for this article, Cummings said there's no good reason to place a safety monitor in the passenger seat instead of behind the steering wheel. It's optics, she says. They don't want to admit the obvious, that it's a person in there, another person who's requested anonymity because they still work in an industry where Musk holds power. What does it have to do with anything? And it's obviously a whole lot different to have somebody in the passenger seat than behind the wheel. SpaceX has long been Musk's most stable company. It has it has a dominant product line, a clear sense of mission, and unlike Tesla, a single empowered deputy, Chief Operating Officer Gwen Shotwell, who's worked with Musk since the company's earliest days, overseeing a business that put 84% of all satellites into orbit last year, as well as cargo and crew for the International Space Station. Although NASA has another option to send cargo into space stations. Northrop Grumman's Cygnus spacecraft. There's no real SpaceX competitors in the U.S. for astronaut missions, and there's no real competitors at all. Boeing, which also has a NASA contract to transport crew, has yet to conduct a successful mission in its Starliner program and couldn't even bring the people back. Oh my gosh. When the Starliner finally flew in 2024, after years of delays, some of the thrusters malfunctioned and it suffered from helium leaks, prompting NASA to send it back to Earth empty. The 2 American astronauts on board had to wait 9 months at the space station for a SpaceX capsule to bring them home. On one hand, the contrast between SpaceX and Boeing attempting to transport astronauts is a testament to what Musk has achieved. But for years, SpaceX competitors, as well as a handful of U.S. government officials, have argued that the government's reliance on Musk represents a vulnerability, giving an erratic billionaire leverage over an essential military asset. The criticism grew louder in 2023 after biographer Walter Isaacson, a left-wing liberal, reported that Musk had refused a request from the Ukrainian military to turn on SpaceX Starlink internet service to help with the planned attack in Russian-occupied Crimea. In September, a group of U.S. Senate Democrats wrote a letter to then Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin suggesting that the government should develop its own systems and that reliance on SpaceX posed grave national security risks. Once again, not saying anything about the fact that that was completely a fabricated story and was proven to be incorrect. The following February, Forbes reported that Mike Gallagher, then a Wisconsin Republican representative, sent a letter to Musk complaining that Starlink was denying service to Taiwan, which he suggested might put SpaceX military contract at risk. SpaceX denied working against the U.S. Oh, it says here, okay, they did come back. U.S. or Ukrainian interests and said it wasn't operating in Taiwan because the government had not granted a license. The company kept its contracts, and the criticism died down, partly because Musk rockets have many more fans than critics within the government. Trump seemed to count himself among the admirers, especially after Musk became the largest financial supporter. During campaign speeches last fall, Trump would often talk about blah, blah, blah. Okay, the 2024 Republican platform includes plans to enhance partnerships with commercial space companies, and Trump repeatedly suggested his administration would fund a mission to Mars. But Musk's going to do that on his own. Okay, in late May, after Musk complained about the tax bill, Trump pulled 𝐒𝐦𝐚𝐲's nomination, the guy who Musk wanted for NASA, citing a thorough review of past associations. He was an ex-Democrat, as is Trump, as is Musk, as is, go down the list. They're all ex-Democrats. He wrote in an early June, a reporter asked Trump about them. Trump said Musk was mad about the elimination of Tesla's EV credits. He also seemed to hint at a possible conflict of interest, noting that 𝐒𝐦𝐚𝐲 and Musk had been close, which I didn't think was appropriate. Then Musk made a threat that was much worse. Yes, this was bad. I didn't like this at all. In light of the president's statement about cancellation of my government contract, said Musk, SpaceX will begin decommissioning its Dragon spacecraft immediately. The threat was clear. Without Dragon, the U.S. would struggle to access the space station or anything else until Boeing fixed the issues with Starliner, which isn't scheduled to fly again until 2026 at the earliest. The other option would be to ask help from Russia. Multiple companies and startups working on their own rockets were soon receiving calls, but of course, none of them could do squat. The decision to cultivate SpaceX competitors made sense, according to Lori Garver, a former NASA deputy administrator under President Barack Obama, who was one of Musk's most important allies in Washington a decade ago. It is untenable to have a CEO of a prime defense and aerospace contractor threaten to shut down services the government has contracted with them to perform, she said. Yeah, well, I agree. Stupid. Again, Musk back down. Okay, let's see here. Not sure I'm going to read all the rest of this. In May, before the company's most recent Starship launch, Musk told aerospace journalist Eric Berger that studying the performance of the craft's tiles on reentry was the most important element of the test flight. We've got like a dozen or more of these experiments. We're trying different coatings each time. Musk's apparent efforts to kill a competing rocket, Boeing Space Launch System, the rocket NASA planned to use to launch its forthcoming moon mission, also appeared to have failed. On June 5th, the same day that he and Trump began their feud, Senator Ted Cruz, a Republican from Texas, added a provision to the tax bill that allocated $4.1 billion in funding for Boeing's SLS. I didn't know that. Did you know that? I wonder if we should look into that. So, okay. Well, this goes on and on. This goes on to do another few thousand words on X and other things. I think that's the main part that I wanted to share with you. But Bloomberg obviously doesn't like Musk, hasn't for a very long time, especially, I guess, now that he's probably because he's a Republican or kind of a Republican. And they have never really been a fan of anything about EVs and Tesla. So that's the kind of journalism you get. I thought I'd share that with you. That's all I got for you right now. You might want to go back and check out both videos from earlier today. I'll put both cards up. Both of them had already gotten lots and lots and lots of views. So maybe you've already watched it. But both of them deserved all those views. Of course they did. So if you liked what I just did, hit the like button, put comments below. Let me know what you think about Bloomberg, or let me know what you think about this kind of journalism. Yeah, I think that's all I got for you on a Sunday night. All regular programming tomorrow. As far as I know, it has been great talking to you.